time again. Time for me to try to remember that I need to make try to make music for that intro there. I am, of course, the Mighty Pong.
And I'm Crux.
And you are currently watching the SYN Shop podcast. We got some special stuff for you tonight. We got something that I knew was a thing, but I didn't know that I knew someone that was involved with that thing. So I think you're gonna like this. But before we get to that, I do have a quick announcement I did want to make real quick. We are, of course, the SYN Shop, located at 1075 American Pacific Drive, Suite C, in fabulous Henderson, Nevada. But unless you are a member, you are going to have to wait a little bit to come check out the shop. We are currently closed to the public for now, but we'd like to remind you that while we are closed to the public, if you are in a shared space elsewhere, make sure that you wear your mask and clean tools, surfaces, and material before and after you use them. Stay home, don't touch your face, and for Pete's sake, wash your damn hands. To stay updated on the shop's open status, you can check out synshop.org/COVID status to find the latest information. And to make sure that you're notified of our future events, including virtual ones just like this, you can join us at meetup.com/Synshop. In addition to that, we are currently in the process of moving the shop. So if you would like to place make any kind of donation to the shop, you can do that at, tell them how, Crux.
So if you go to synshop.org/donate, that will get you to the place where you can make a donation. Also, if you're a member, you can change your membership level to one that has a reoccurring donation if you want to help us out that way. That particular one actually helps out members of the shop that can't afford a membership otherwise, or can't afford like the price increase that we've had to do recently. So the people donating on the reoccurring donation helps to provide, for people to be able to access the shop, but still will allow us to keep the lights on.
Absolutely. All right, great. Yeah, so that's of course, the best place. And if you're like, I would like to donate to the shop and also push Laundry Day back a day, you can also type !merch into the chat and find out about all our fancy schmancy SYN Shop podcast shirts. We've got some of the older SYN Shop logo shirts as well. We've got gigantic mouse pads. Oh, there you go. Yeah, there you go. The old school shirts, absolutely. And we got some of the some gigantic mouse pads that you can see on our project stream on Monday night. That reminds me, on Monday night we have a project stream. You should check it out. We've got all kinds of parts have just been delivered to my house for the 909 and for the monitor light project. So I got out easy on this one. I got out easy on the monitor project. But I'll tell you about, I'll talk about that in the post game, in addition to sheer terror also appearing in the post game. Anyway, let's get into it. Here we go. Our guest tonight is Uglyman. Now, first of all, you're a returning champion to the show.
I am. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Welcome back, for sure. So I knew that you had worked for Mackie. That's why we brought you in. You were on the Copy Wronged episode that we talked about. And I definitely recommend, if you haven't seen that episode, go back and check that out. I think it's on YouTube, I'm pretty sure. But at any rate, I had no idea whatsoever until just like a couple weeks ago that you ran a BattleTech. Now, what is the actual proper word for that?
You could say it was a BattleTech pod site. That would be as good as any.
Okay, all right. That seems like one of those things that if you don't have the right word for it, then someone's gonna say, well, actually, it's called, So, but at any rate, so I had no idea that you ran one of those, and that's just freaking awesome. So how long have you been a member of the shop?
So I moved here to Henderson just over 2 years ago. And I was already aware of the shop before I moved down. And after I moved here, it was, a few weeks of getting settled in, and then I went to check it out. I think I was showing up on Friday nights or something for a while, and, met some cool people and was having fun there. I think I joined before I showed up. But anyway, it's been really a cool way for us to meet people. My girlfriend has moved down here with me. She's also a member and has gone quite a few times.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what would you say your favorite thing about the shop is?
My favorite thing about the shop is just it was actually one of my favorite things about the business that I'm going to talk about tonight is just
Mm-hmm.
the type of people that show up to a place that has just sort of unique amenities, a place that has, you know, weird stuff going on. That you show up and you meet interesting people, have interesting conversations. It's stuff that you don't find other places sometimes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very cool place to just come and meet some people and talk to some people, learn from people. It's been great for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was actually thinking about that earlier today. I think that is my favorite thing about the shop. Like just the crazy variety of people that we have there. Like, you know, you for example, I mean, you know, but we've had all kinds of people on this shop on this show. We've had a guy that's building his own converting a van into a mobile home. We've had a guy that runs a keyboard company. We've had school teachers on. They not a member of the shop, but still, you know, we've had all kinds of stuff. You know, it's great. All right. Anyway, main event time. BattleTech. What is it? Explain that in like 30 seconds.
Okay.
Yeah.
So BattleTech, a lot of people know it as a board game made by FASA, FASA. It was a creation of Jordan Wiseman and some of his friends. You know, there's a lot of people involved with this thing. If you go back, the early authors of those books and stuff. But there was a board game. There's about 100, or I mean, back in the day there was 100. There's more than that now. There's a whole bunch of these novels that are about this universe. There's game resource books for the sort of board game and role-playing games, and then there's the Mech Warrior video games, and there's the BattleTech pod sites, and there, you know, there's all this different stuff that all takes place in the same sort of fictional universe.
Okay. So why male models? No, so why what so as far as the game itself, what is BattleTech?
Oh, sure. So the general idea is that we're way in the future. We're in the, you know, in the 3050s or something, you know, way off in the future, and you have you know, all these factions sort of throughout the galaxy that are battling each other sort of territorially and on various bases, you know, religious basis or whatever.
Mm.
And these factions are battling each other in giant robots as kind of their main weapon of the day is these giant robots that have great weapons. And you know, for some reason were designed in such a way that it's really hard to drive them in a video game. But anyway, they're you know, the most of the battles take place with these giant robots. There's, you know, this sort of culture in the game universe of, you know, the pilots are sort of the warriors or the fighter pilots of the day or whatever. And then there's also other vehicles and other things that you know, don't come into all parts of BattleTech. It just depends on, you know, which of these many products or things you're dealing with.
Okay. Yeah, I watched if anybody's wants to see a little taste of that, check out the Dooley promo, Dooley, and it is 90s tastic, but it does do
Yeah,
an interesting job of like filling in the world around BattleTech a little bit.
yeah, there's a whole era of people that learned about BattleTech from that video right before they jumped in the pods. That video has Joan Severance in it,
Yeah,
Judge Reinhold or whatever.
yeah.
It's a really bizarre piece
And
of history.
oh, who is that dude? The guy that was in it, he played like he was a total character actor from like the 90s. He was in, I think he was in Revenge of the Nerds, or
There's a couple of famous actors in that thing. There's Judge
yeah,
Reinhold. There's another guy that I'm sorry I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but yeah, there's they packed a lot into that video.
they did. So okay, so before the arcade game, or I don't know the proper terminology for it, but but before the game that you sit in, it was of course a board game. So how did you get started on the game in the board game phase or in the video game phase?
Sort of. It was actually kind of. I got into BattleTech in one of the weirdest ways to get into BattleTech, which was the card game that came out
Oh.
in the late '90s. I was a Magic player. I was playing Magic the Gathering, and of course, I was, in Seattle. I grew up north of Seattle,
Mhm.
and Wizards of the Coast is a Seattle company, and so, um, we were huge fans of Magic up there. Through junior high and high school or whatever, we were playing that game,
Mhm.
and we would read the Duelist magazine. And the Duelist magazine was, by Wizards of the Coast, generally about Magic and their other games. And we started to hear about the Wizards of the Coast Game Center that was opening in Seattle, which was near the University of Washington. It was right on the Ave, just kind of between 45th and 50th, I think, if you know that neighborhood at all. But it was going to be this state-of-the-art facility. They were going to have this giant place where they could hold the Magic World Championships. They're going to have a retail store. They're going to have a restaurant. They were going to have a huge arcade. And then attached to it was this thing that they called the Airlock, which was where they had 12 BattleTech pods.
Mhm.
And so I read about it there. We went to one of the first, I think it was the first World Championship tournament that they held there for Magic.
Mhm.
And all I wanted to do was play in those pods because I'd read about them in that magazine article. And my laser tag place had closed, so I was like dying for something new. And I got to play a couple games in the pods there, and I was totally hooked from the minute I saw him. I just knew, like, oh, this is where it's at. I got to get involved with these things somehow.
Mhm.
But then, as that was happening right around that era, I don't know what happened first or second or whatever, but probably within months of that, we were playing the BattleTech card game that Wizards of the Coast came out with. And another friend that was into the BattleTech board game introduced me to that when he heard that I was playing the card game. So within, 3 or 4 months, I probably got hooked up with all of these things at the same time.
Oh wow. Okay. So then what caused the transfer from, I want to, I really like this game to I'm going to open up a BattleTech center. Like how did you go from, I want to go to this place and play these games to I want to run one?
So I played at Wizards. I had always, I'd always loved what the industry sort of calls location-based entertainment. I'd
Mhm.
always loved bowling and laser tag and arcades and all these things, particularly arcades. And BattleTech to me, even though it's not exactly an arcade game, it was sort of like the ultimate arcade game to me. It was this totally at the time state-of-the-art piece of technology. I wanted to own them and run them right then in the late '90s.
Mhm.
But this was around the time I was working at Mackie. It's around the time of the other story that I told on this show. So
Yeah.
it was sort of this dream thing that I imagined, but I didn't have any mental path from here to there. Didn't know what that was going to look like or anything else. It was May of 2009. I had, we got Mackie moved away and shut down. And then I went and worked worked in a warehouse for a while. I worked as a low voltage electrician, and I enjoyed being a low voltage electrician, but then the housing market crashed in 2008, and so it was hard to find work. And then I was working doing commercial AV work, and I
Mhm.
was working for this little company in Washington that they screwed me out of some money. They canned me and shorted me on my last check.
Ugh.
And it was going into the summer of 2009. I just snapped. I was just like, I can't go to work for somebody else right now. I got to do something on my own.
Mm.
And around this time, there was this news article that had come out that said something about a new version of the MechWarrior game was coming. There was a new BattleTech, a new MechWarrior video game coming, a new state of the art thing.
Mhm.
And that got me reminiscing about the pods, and I started looking at the forums, and I started to find out that, hey, there's still some people playing this thing. And then it turned into a road trip, and we met the owner in Denver. And then we were, that was how I went from a player to a guy that was really serious about doing this.
Mhm.
Was on that road trip when I met Craig Evans in Denver. His call sign is Pharaoh. And Craig told me, if you want to do it, try and help you. And he said, but I have this conversation with everybody that comes and sees me. And I said, well, let's say I'm serious, and then it was, by the time I got home, my dad was having some surgery. It kind of delayed things. And as soon as that was, over with and he was on the mend, then I just started kind of going for it. I put together a business plan that was just an awful business plan that didn't make any sense.
What about
I used it to raise money.
What about it didn't make sense?
Probably the beer that we drank while riding it didn't help. It was just one of these ill-fated things. But it started as I had been talking to some friends about it, just trying to get ideas, like how can I raise this money?
Mm-hmm.
By then I kind of had the idea that there was a set of pods for sale for $25,000 in Madison, Wisconsin. And I say that number publicly because it was listed publicly at the time. Everybody knew how much they were at the time.
Yeah.
And so I came up, I went to a friend who, had recently gotten an MBA or whatever, and he had some like spreadsheets from one of his financial classes. And
Mm-hmm.
we sat around and split a half rack of beer and like filled in the little boxes on that thing and went, oh, it's a business plan. Like I've got it all figured out now. Like I know how much money I'm going to spend on toilet paper and electricity and all these things. Well, I mean, in hindsight, I don't know what it was all based on, but we worked really hard on it, I thought. And I put together these 2 notebooks, and, I've always found if you get those little plastic sheet protectors, people will be really impressed by a notebook, even if the content isn't all that good. And I sort of flipped through it, and, I took it to, a couple people and showed them. And so, people say, hey, this is a good notebook. You should give it a shot. And so my
oh, this is the plastic sheets. This guy knows what he's talking about.
Yes, it's shiny.
It's foolproof.
Oh yeah.
It looks like you made it out of something. It's not just like printed.
Right.
So the first person that I talked to about it was my old low voltage boss from the company that didn't screw me, the guy where I got my electrical license. And I said, hey, I've got this business plan. I know that you previously pitched and started a business kind of the same way. Like, can I sit down with you and just go over this notebook? And I just want to get your feedback and see what you think of it. And I want to see if you've got any friends that maybe might want to hear about it or something like that, because I got to raise some money.
Yeah.
And so he sat down and he flipped through the notebooks, and I had 2 notebooks. One of them was like sort of telling the story of BattleTech and what the pods are.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other notebook was this goofy business plan. And as he flipped through it, he was like, you don't actually know how many rolls of toilet paper you're going to use. This doesn't make any sense. And I was like, well, is there any way to know that? And he said, no. He goes, this is one of those things. You got to just jump on it. So by the end of the conversation, he changed my life. He said, sure, I'll put some money in this. Let's try it.
Mm-hmm.
And he offered to cut a check for a portion of it. And I wasn't selling equity. It was just a loan on a goofy basis that I sort of cooked up. I said, hey, I don't know when I can pay you back, but when I do, I'll give you this much more.
Mm-hmm.
I can't pay interest rates and work that into this business plan. I got to be kind of flexible here. So let's do a flat rate. I'll try to pay you back in 2 years. I'll try to pay you this much more. And, let me go give this a shot. And he said, okay. And then the next person I talked to was my cousin, because he had some business contacts that I thought might be interested. And he didn't want to show it to his business contacts. He flipped through it and said, yeah, I want to do this. This sounds cool. And then when I showed up and talked to my dad about how these meetings went, he's like, so people are actually giving you money for this thing? And I said, yeah. And so, well, then Dad wanted in on it too. So, and he is not a video game guy. My dad is not, he's generally not very aware of video games.
Yeah, peer pressure, everyone's doing it. So
yeah, well, he didn't want to miss out. At this point, it starts to seem like a good investment. Like I've created a market panic or something on this thing. So at that point, I was pretty close to having the money that I needed. Like I needed some more, and I had calculated wrongly that what would sort of safely get the business launched would be about $48,000.
It's that damn toilet paper, I'm telling you.
That number was way stupidly low. I didn't know that at the time, and I fell short of that number.
Mm-hmm.
I think I raised $42,000.
Mm-hmm.
And the day that I officially opened the doors, I had $156 in the bank. So it was that was with all my retirement things cashed in, and everything that I could sell was sold. And it was like, well, now I've got $5,000 a month in expenses and $150 in the bank. I better start selling games.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it was a wild ride.
So I was wondering, what you're starting this, kind of put this into context for us. Like, what year are we talking about here, right? You open the doors, you got $126 in your bank account. What year is it?
Yeah. It was so I got laid off in May of 2009. It was summer of 2009. I came down here to Vegas on that road trip. We did a sort of side trip thing through Denver. And that was where I met Craig and sort of got the idea that I had always had the idea, but this was when I got the idea that it was possible. And he said, oh, I know how to move pods. I've moved 100 pods before this. He goes, if you buy some pods and need them moved, I can help you. I said, okay, great. So, you know, he didn't think he'd ever hear from me again. And, you know, a couple months later, I said, hey, Craig, come on up here and help me with it. And he said, holy crap, you raised that money already.
You're actually doing this. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. So I was about 28 years old, I think, at this point. And, you know, it was 2009. And we got open. We sort of unofficially, sneakily opened and started selling a few games around Thanksgiving. And we officially opened it, like, for real, January 1st, when I got my business license in the city of Kirkland.
Nice.
You know, sometimes you have to kind of be a little sneaky when you totally run out of money because you don't know how to do a business plan.
No, you were just testing things to make sure that it was going to work.
Yeah, we were just seeing if they worked. Yeah, it's just a
Absolutely.
private deal. So somebody dropped some cash in the garbage can, I found it or whatever.
Yeah, this is a private party, you know? Yeah. So okay, so now I remember when I was younger, there was I guess you could call it like the first wave of VR. We had talked about that a little bit in chat, I think earlier this
Sure,
this week,
you're talking
week.
like the VPL iPhone and stuff like that. The EYE phone.
Oh, is that what that was? The thing with the three-dimensional chessboards and the freaking pterodactyls that would pick you up and drop you off the side of the thing?
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about that era of VPL, which was Jordan Lanier, I think, was one of the guys involved with that.
Sure.
That's before my time in VR, but yeah.
Yeah. So this was far after that. This was like 20, well, not 20 years, but like 15 or so after that, right?
Well, so the horrifying part of all of this whole thing of raising investor money and opening a BattleTech pod site was that I think the pods were more than 15 years old when I got them.
I was going to get to that. We're going to go to the pods definitely here in just a little bit.
Yeah.
So, okay. So what was the competition like, though, is where I was going. I was thinking more about the business for this. So what was the competition like? Was that still a thing? You know, you're getting ready to open the doors here. Is there anything else in town that is even similar to what you're getting ready to do?
So yes and no. Seattle's a tech town, so there's always some weird thing going on. You know, there's always some weird venture capital funded thing that's trying to do something where you pay $75 an hour to put a thing on your head or whatever. You know, there's always something going on. But I think that at that point it was
you just got me thinking of like all kinds of different things that you could convince people to pay $75 for to put on their head.
One of those rainbow clown wigs or something, you know?
Totally, yeah. Internet of clown wigs.
So the thing was, there was, I think, I don't know exactly, you know, timeline wise. I was so focused on what I was doing. I don't know what anybody else was doing, but I think that Oculus was kind of starting to be talked about. I don't know if it was out yet. Maybe a dev kit was starting to show up somewhere.
Right.
I mean, we were right in that transition where I would say there must have been roughly 12 to 15 years where VR kind of disappeared. I mean, there was that stuff in the 90s that you're talking about back in the days of Lawnmower Man and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we were all fascinated with the movie Lawnmower Man. And the VR headset in that movie is the VPL iPhone.
Okay.
That's EYE phone.
Right. It was such a terrible movie. If you go back and look at it now, it was so terrible.
Yes. Well, I just watched it recently, actually,
Oh
because
yeah,
I'm in this world, I guess. I don't know, but
sure.
industry research.
Yeah.
So the thing is after that craze, after that sort of venture capital craze died out, that also put pressure on these guys that were making the pods, because the pods were kind of seen as the same opportunity. It was this VR stuff, and the company was called Virtual World Entertainment, and it was all sort of pitched to the investors as, let's do VR stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And there was money for any of that for a while until they figured out it didn't necessarily make money. And then it kind of, the money dried up for a while until these modern era, you've got all the HTC and the Oculus and all these other VR things now.
Yeah.
But those were coming out like, well, I was already open. And I was already open with stuff that was from the previous wave of venture capital funded VR stupidity. So I was ahead of all of that by a little bit as far as getting my doors open.
So okay, so by that point there had been at least one wave of it. So no, you got that going for you, and then in addition to that, you're in Seattle, right? But I was just thinking, like, when I was writing this up earlier this week, I wonder what it must have been like to go to the city and explain to some poor clerk what it was that you were trying to do.
Oh, you have no idea the drama that you create when you do. I mean, I guess you guys probably do have an idea what it's like, where you have the most ridiculous conversations with like the city planning department about zoning, and you're trying to explain to them, like, not only will this have no negative impact on my customers, my customers are going to be so happy to have a bunch of nerds hanging around in the middle of the night that are going to just call 911 if somebody breaks a window and tries to get into your place. Like, just the idea that we would have a negative impact on anything was sort of bizarre to me at the time.
Yeah.
You would have a little noise or something like that, but the problem that you run into with anything video game related in public like that, any location-based entertainment with video games, is that commercial landlords a lot of times are older people who've been around for a while. Real estate investors, by the time they get to the point where they own a strip mall that you're trying to lease a space in, those guys have been around a while. And they remember when arcades were a different thing than they are now. And they remember the problems that they had in the early 80s. They remember the drama that was created for commercial landlords when arcades were flaky about paying their bills. There was graffiti, there was drugs, there was all kinds of stuff going on. And so you have all kinds of problems where you find the perfect space, you talk to the landlord, and they just go, I have no interest in having you in here. And then when you find a space and you go to the city and you say, can I go there? And they say no. They say, no, you can't go there. You could go in a warehouse at the end of this road or whatever, but they don't let you just go wherever you want. I didn't know any of that when I opened. So I just went and leased a space and didn't really explain what I was going to do.
Oh boy.
So
they're just basically like, oh no, you're not going to come in here, play your Thompson twins and burn out in your Firebird. Oh no.
Right. That is exactly the conversation you have over and over again. It's bizarre. And you will a lot of times have a real estate agent come back to you and say, I talked to the landlord and I told him this was something different. And he said, no, I'm never doing another arcade. And so that was a big problem. My original business plan called for putting the pods in a location that already had people. We were trying to go into a bowling alley that had its card room closed by the city. We had this other scheme, and it was the thing that Craig in Denver, he was saying, I needed to get leased into a family fun center or something. Well, there's not a ton of family fun centers up there, and they weren't interested. We talked to some of those people. And then it became this thing of like, I have the money, I can get the pods, I could lease a space. Why do we need anything else? And everybody said, you won't make money if you're just pods and nothing else. And I said, well, let's find out. And so I just leased a space that was right next to a comedy club. And the comedy club was super busy. I was driving around at night, Kirkland, Washington. I pulled into Totem Square. Laugh's comedy spot was right next to this empty space. And they had this line of 200 people waiting to get in for the next show. And there was 200 people already in there. And I thought, oh, this will be easy. These people will see the pods. They'll say, what is this thing? And I'll be able to sell to like a percentage of these people. Different comedians every weekend, different fans will be coming through. you know, some weekends will be better than others, but we'll get a bunch of business out of this.
Mm-hmm.
What we found was that the comedy club was a great neighbor. The owners, Dave and Angela, are super cool. Dave Dennison, they own a place down in Seattle now. This was on the other side of the lake over in Kirkland.
Okay.
But the fans, the people going to the comedy club, they had zero interest in what we were doing. I probably sold $50 worth of games in 2 years in that location to people that were trying to go to a comedy show. But it did give this weird awareness that we were there.
Yeah.
And it started to be, people knew something was going on, and maybe they told it to some friend who was into video games, and you'd say, you know, somebody would come in and say, my mom went to a comedy show here and said I should check this out or whatever. So, you know, it started to kind of roll a little bit from that.
Yeah.
It did help us to be there, but it was probably not as good as being in a family fun center or something.
Right. Yeah. If you're in a place where people are playing mini golf, then yeah, it's going to be a little bit easier to sell that, you know, rather than people that are going out to be entertained. Like, I guess in that case, what hurt you there was the difference between a person saying, I want to go be entertained, and a person saying, I want to participate for my own entertainment.
I want to make effort to be entertained versus, you know, have it fed to me.
Thought deeply about sort of different attitudes of different types of people who are interested in different types of things, you know. I had never really thought deeply about that until I needed to figure out who would buy my thing, you know.
Right.
So it was
absolutely. Actually, one thing that we do need to think about real quick here is doing our real quick mid-show break. We are talking again with Uglyman. He used to run a BattleTech pod. Was it pod? BattleTech pod. Okay, there you go. A BattleTech pod in the Seattle area, Kirkland, for those of you who are in Seattle. We're talking with him about BattleTech pods and the technology behind them, all that stuff. We're going to go into more of that here in just a quick second. We are, of course, broadcasting not from, but for, I guess, the SYN Shop located in the Las Vegas Valley area. For more information about the shop, you can go over to synshop.org, synshop.org. And for more information on events, including live ones just like this, you can go over to meetup.com/Synshop. Also, we are reading the comments, so if you do have any kind of comments about or questions for our guest, please feel free to leave those over there in the chat. And actually over there in the chat, whatever, wherever you're watching. And also we're going to be talking about about a whole bunch of stuff in the post game. Probably more things to do with BattleTech and all kinds of stuff. So yeah. Oh, and also my moment of sheer terror earlier today. I was a mess. It's funny in retrospect. It's one of those. Anywho, stick around. If you're watching on Twitch, stick around for that. If you're watching on YouTube, sorry.
You should have been on Twitch.
You should have been on Twitch. You know, it is what it is, you know. All right, so let's get back to it. Okay, so. Oh, and also exclamation point merch if you want a shirt. We move forward. Let's see. We were talking about explaining it to the city. That is always one of those things where it's a challenge to explain to, you know, the normal people what it is you want to do. Like when we were trying to throw parties back in the 90s, you know, we're trying to, you know, rent out a warehouse space. And they're like, you want to do what now? It's just a party. We just want to throw a party. Let's just.
Yep. Regular party.
Just a party. What kind of party? with loud music. There's going to be loud music, but you're in a warehouse. So yeah, what does it matter? Well, okay.
So just a couple quick examples of what you're talking about is when I first opened, there was a thing back in the day that was very strict and very important, at least in that part of the world, where they would do amusement machine licensing, and you would have to go pay X amount of dollars per year, per quarter, per month, whatever. You would get a sticker that you put on the machine, and then an inspector would come around and look at that sticker to find out if the machine was licensed. And they did that because they knew that the mob was dumping the bucket of quarters out of these machines and just running away with it. You know, like there wasn't a lot of accounting going on. So they had to come up with a way to capture some tax revenue from that stuff or whatever. And the amusement machine licensing was the thing that sort of evolved, you know, into the industry. The thing is that the pods are not a coin-op machine.
Right.
They're nothing like that.
Yeah.
You walk in, you talk to the operator, he gives you a lesson, he puts you in the machine, he tells you a story, he loads the game. There's all this stuff to it, and you pay cash or credit card or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Totally different thing. It's more like laser tag than it is like an arcade.
Right.
And so I'm down there at the city. I'm talking to, I had $150 in the bank. I'm trying to open this place. I had invested $25,000 in the pods, $4,000 in trucking to get the pods to me. I paid a guy to take the windows out of the storefront because I realized, oh, how do I get them in this building? Because there's no like roll-up door or anything. And so, you know, if you take the leap and try to do something like this, you'll learn a whole lot really fast.
Yeah.
And if you knew all the things that you're going to learn in the next, you know, few months, you would never take the leap. You'd never try it,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
if you knew what you're getting into.
Right.
So what happened was I talked to my lawyer. I said, what should I do about this amusement machine licensing thing? There's 8 pods and there's, you know, $50 a year or something in licensing. I don't have $400. What am I supposed to do? At that point, the lawyer quit returning my phone calls. I never heard from him again. This was a lawyer that I had paid to set up my LLC, and he just never returned my calls again. And he was a referral from, he was my parents' lawyer, and I talked to them and I said, could you talk to this guy and find out why he won't return my calls? And she called and she was like, she talked to him for a minute and he just said, oh yeah, I'm not interested in that. so
what
I was
in the world?
I was in this situation where I'm like, okay, what should I do? And he finally called me because he felt bad after talking to my mom or whatever. And he said, look, I don't think you should pay that license fee because, you know, you're gonna get in trouble, like just being on somebody's radar that you're there. You might as well just let them come catch you. Well, I didn't have any money to be caught, you know. So what I did was I cooked up this little storyline that there was machines back in the day, like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles machine that had 4 sets of controls, was one game.
Yeah.
This was 8 giant sets of controls. It was 8 separate machines. The machines were just the controls, and the server had the game. It was one game with 8 sets of controls. So I said, I'm going to pay him $50.
That's not bad.
See what happens.
That's not bad at all.
That works.
Yeah, and I talked to the guys in Denver. They kind of gave me that idea. They were like, you know, sometimes some locations you can kind of get away with this. So whatever it was, like the total license fee that I put into it, it cost me $92 or something like that. It was some weird amount of money. And a year later, I was thinking, I never heard back. They never sent me a sticker. Nothing ever happened. They cashed my check and nothing ever happened. What, you know, what am I supposed to do? So I went to a bunch of bars in the neighborhood and I looked at their Golden Tee machines. None of them had stickers. So I went, well, that's weird. So I went and I pulled the city budget from the city of Kirkland, and I could see amusement machine licensing, their total revenue collected for the year was $92. It was just the money that I had sent them for the entire city. I said, well, I'm not going to pay that again.
Yeah.
so
they're sitting around, look at this schmuck with the $92. Yeah. What the hell?
So I actually pulled a bunch of historic records that I could go back and I could see a point where there was a budget for an enforcement guy that would check those. And then one year he got laid off because there was no more arcades. It was like after the big arcade in Kirkland closed, they didn't have that guy anymore. And so I was the only sucker that paid that year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the thing. Like sometimes you just gotta do it, you know, and let them catch you. Exactly. Yeah. So
and they will almost always approach you with a tone of like, it's going to cost you this much money to straighten this out. They're not going to throw you in jail over it. No. So just go for it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so before we run out of time, because I know that it's super easy to get wrapped up in this. There's a lot to talk about, but I wanted to get to the hardware here because that was one of the things that I found just so interesting about this, and one of the things that I had trouble squaring for a little while when I looked at like when you were open in 2010 and what the machines were like on the inside. So can you kind of like go over what kind of hardware was inside the pods?
Yeah. So just quickly to give some perspective, the pods went through several different versions. There was a System 1 that was developed in Chicago, System 2 in Chicago, System 2.5 I think was when they started to deploy them to other cities. And System 3, around that time they had Red Planet was a thing. Red Planet was a game other than BattleTech that runs on the pods. I'll get to that in a minute. But then they came out with the System 4 Tesla pods, which was what they had at Wizards of the Coast. At the time they had them at Wizards of the Coast, they were already starting to close some of the Wizards or some of the Virtual World branded sites, I think. But typically it would be a set of 8 pods with kind of the general idea. And there were some sites historically that had a lot of sets of pods and really good locations, Vegas Strip, Times Square, places like that. There, there was places that had a lot of pods. The System 4 pods, the Tesla pods are what they call. They're sort of the rounded appearance. And some of them are gray, some of them are white. That's just a difference in color of plastic. There's no difference internally. In the pods, you have 7 CRT monitors, at least the way they were designed at that point. Some have been upgraded to LCD now, but you had 7 CRT monitors. There was a PC that originally was a deck tower. It had a really crazy 3D board. It was like a graphics board that was being used for sort of computer graphics research at the time for like academic purposes and stuff. They got a hold of those and they were using them. I'm sure they were used for some government applications or something too. There was something going on with that. But one of the things that makes the pods unique, they have what they call the Tesla pods, the round ones that came System 4 era, which was late 90s, I guess, mid 90s. They had what's called the Infinity Optics system. And what that is the same thing that the military was using on fighter jet simulators at the time. It was stuff that they found triggered physiological responses in the pilots. And they found that like you could trigger a fear response in a pilot if you would put him in a simulator that had this optical system. It was a different biological experience for the guy.
And that worked. Wasn't that a something to do with like lenticular lenses where it made the light appear to come from farther away? Was it that kind of thing?
What it does is the monitor faces the floor. The monitor is mounted up high and faces the floor. Below the monitor is a beam splitter that's set at an angle. When you're sitting in the pods, that's your windshield. So like if you're sitting in the pods, it's sort of like this kind of thing. There's a windshield. The monitor is mounted up high and pointed down at the windshield.
Okay.
It's a beam splitter piece of glass. It has a special coating on it. There's special optics things going on here. And so what that means is that if you crouch down on the floor and look up, you can see the monitor. If you sit in the pods and look straight ahead, you can also see the monitor because there's a curved mirror at the back of the pod that the monitor image comes down, reflects off of your windshield, goes back and hits that curved monitor and then comes back towards you. So if you add up all those distances, you end up, your eyes are focusing out to sort of an infinity, sort of it's like your eyes are focusing to the horizon.
Right. Okay.
When you look at the radar screen in the pods, which is just a regular direct view CRT monitor, your eyes have to refocus. You don't think about this when you drive down the road and you look at your speedometer, your eyes have to refocus. When you add that little bit of realism to a video game in the 90s, it totally freaks people out. I mean, think about where we were in the video game sort of evolution in the 90s and the types of games you were playing in 1996. Sit in a thing that can make your eyeballs refocus and things like that. And people had real physical reaction, particularly to Red Planet, which was the other game that came out for the pods. And it was a fast hovercraft racing game. But anyway,
I'm showing it right now. I'm showing Red Planet.
Okay. So the Tesla pods were, they were in virtual world branded locations. And over the years, it became harder and harder to maintain those graphics boards, these specialty pieces of hardware that they sort of had in them. It was no longer possible to just sort of go to the computer store and buy parts for a deck tower from that era or whatever. And so they needed something a little different. Microsoft wanted to make MechWarrior 4. A deal was struck to buy the Virtual World umbrella, which had FASA and all the BattleTech stuff. This was around the time Wizards got his hand on the license to do the card game, and Microsoft was gonna do the MechWarrior 4 game. There was other MechWarrior games already existed. The guys from Chicago, a lot of them moved out to Seattle to work at Microsoft, and there was an executive from Virtual World, Jim Garbarini, that he wanted to continue things on for the location-based entertainment. He licensed that away in order to make them possible to run by an outside company. Like, he wanted to put them in Dave & Buster's and places like that.
Yeah.
If you're going to do that, you have to make them serviceable. And to do that, you need some sort of commodity, sort of regular hardware. So he upgraded them all to, they ran them in Dave & Buster's. He supported that with those, sort of strange graphics hardware.
Mm-hmm.
As that era was sort of ending and they were running out of parts, he struck a deal to license the MechWarrior 4 engine, got it heavily modified by some programmers in Korea. He brought in Michael Lawrence, who was known as Firestorm, was his call sign. He was the guy that worked for Virtual World. Michael tied it all together. He sort of made it all work so that we could drop in Alienware PCs. They had Windows 2000. They had this modified MechWarrior 4 engine that actually played in some ways significantly different than MechWarrior 4, and in some ways it was similar.
Okay. MechWarrior 4, that's the one that they packaged when they released the Xbox, right? That was the thing. They had like a package deal with that where you got the controller and all that stuff.
MechWarrior was never on Xbox.
Maybe it's
there's a couple different things you could be thinking of. Steel Battalion was a crazy Xbox game that had like 100 buttons or something.
That's the one. Yeah.
That was a different mech license tree. That was not BattleTech.
Okay.
And then there was a mech game that was BattleTech that was for the Xbox, but it was sort of a weird first-person shooter feeling thing. Anyway, the Alienware PCs made it so that the stuff ran on. It was 3 NVIDIA graphics cards to drive these 7 monitors, and to do that in Windows 2000 was a real bit of trickery. So what they did was the first graphics card the first one just drove the main monitor, and the second one, that was like an AGP card or whatever, and the second one was in a PCI slot, and that drove the radar screen, and the third one was a dual head monitor, 2 VGAs. And what they did was they still had 5 more monitors, and those were the little MFD, little multifunction displays where you could configure your weapons and stuff like that. So each MFD had 8 buttons, had a little CRT monitor. What they did was they split the red, green, and blue and shared the sync signal. And then they had the game engine output like overlaid images that were stacked on top of each other. So if you plug that output into a regular monitor, you'll see either 2 or 3 of the MFD images overlapping. But if you plug them into the special wiring in the pods, it splits it out so that you get 5 different monochrome views of your weapon status and things like that.
Wow. Okay.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it was really neat.
So it's basically multiplexed together, and then the hardware demuxed it basically out into the different.
Yeah, they couldn't really make an Alienware PC of that era do more pixels, I think, was really where they were at. I mean, they were sort of running out, and it actually relied on, unfortunately, a lot of people said, why don't you just replace these cards, replace these PCs, go to Windows XP, blah, blah, blah. Everybody had this idea. And some sites now have successfully done that. But at the time when I was in this business, they hadn't yet. The issue there was that they were using weird features of the NVIDIA drivers. They were using horizontal spanning, which fell out of favor in later versions of that driver. It went away. And so you actually couldn't upgrade to a new operating system because then you needed the new drivers that didn't have the horizontal spanning that you needed to make this weird video mess work.
Okay.
So we had really serious legacy issues that locked us in right where we were at.
Wow. Okay. So,
there was a control system. There was RS-232 to a control board. It ran out to, I think, 11 different button boards. The button boards handled lighting up the buttons and reading input from the buttons. It's all just regular sort of ladders of logic gates that you would sort of expect it to be. There was nothing fancy about that part of it. It was just sort of regular stuff. It was regular digital logic of the sort of mid-90s era.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the problem, from more of a year 2020 mindset, and I'm like, well, you could have just had that done by some Arduinos hooked to a little
Yeah.
small display, and just have, offload that crap to those. But then it's like that wasn't a thing at the time. So like, microcontrollers.
It's important to note, like when we got the pods, they basically didn't work. I mean, they were the ones that I got were in great shape, but if you just sit them there and you don't use them for a while, they sort of fall apart. They just sort of, it's like all that old electronic stuff like that if somebody's not going in every day and wiggling the cables until everything works, it just gets worse and worse over time, and then you've got a big project on your hands. So Craig flew up from Denver when I got open and helped me set them up, helped me get them going. Craig was, really, I mean, he's on that short list of people in that era that just really changed my life by saying, we see what you want to do, let us help you do it.
Yeah.
And Craig was one of those that jumped in, and it really wouldn't have been possible without him, because he showed me where the wire harness gets pinched when you shove the monitors back in, and if you do that, it blows up this board, and that costs $1,000, and the guy that has them only has 10 of them.
Oh, God.
So there's those kind of things hanging overhead. There's this huge technical debt when you buy these old machines and try to do business with them.
Yeah, I'm trying to find a picture of the cockpit, just so that people watching can kind of get a grip on what you're describing here. Let me see if I can.
There's a couple famous pictures where they took the plastic shell off. They took a picture like over a guy's shoulder.
Oh, neat.
You'll probably find that one if you Google it. I don't know, but it's.
I think I actually might have it here. Let me see if I can throw that up in the chat here while we're talking. But yeah, no, it's oh, come on, Google, you're letting me down. So
people used to say, well, why don't you just run MechWarrior 4 or whatever? It's like, well, you got to think MechWarrior 4 made to run on your PC. So first of all, you're going to lose all the cool displays and buttons and all that stuff. The joystick's not going to work, everything else. Even if you solve those problems.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally different when you have an operator that needs to sell somebody a game. Somebody needs to come in, they need to get a lesson, they need to talk to somebody, they need to choose what robot they want to drive, choose a mech. They need to put in their information, choose their game types, and then get sort of walked over to the pods. You have to have an interface to load those games. And that was a lot of what was done by the guys that I think were in Korea when they adapted that game engine to the pods. It was that remote interface for the game operator to be able to set up a game but not be a player in the game.
Oh wow. Oh, okay. Man, that's crazy. I'm trying to find a decent picture that I can throw up. Here we go.
Yeah, like imagine almost like a cash register for selling games, selling you credits in the arcade. It was like they had to have that interface. So that's very different than what any home game ever has.
Yeah. Let's see. Let me figure out a way to do this. I think I've got a way. Let's see. It's gonna be. No, definitely not that. 1 second.
By the way, when you take CRT monitors that have been just sitting there burning for 20 years, you've got a lot of work to do when you've got 56 of them in
Absolutely. Yeah.
your business. It's like, oh, these 56 CRTs have to work. Like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
So I'm pretty good at fixing those now. I'm not fast at it, but I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, here we go. So this is so now is this one of the Tesla 2s that we're seeing? Oh, you can't see it, right?
I'm not seeing your picture.
The rounded ones. They look kind of like a. Okay, cool.
So Tesla and Tesla 2 was only a replacement of the PC and some cable elements and things like that. They were the same shells. So they built, I think the number is 160 Tesla pods System 4. And 128 of those, I think, were in the country at the time that I opened. I think 8 of them or 12 of them maybe have gone to Canada right now. They move around a lot.
Okay.
Which you wouldn't think for a thing that's a semi-truckload of old particle board and, digital circuits of CRTs. You wouldn't think that they would make a lot of international trips, but they do. So the I think the best way to explain it is that the Tesla pods and the Tesla 2 pods were the same shell, same controls, same monitors. They got a different PC. There was a few other things. If somebody really wants to talk about the details, talk to me after the show or something. But but there was like some differences in the wire harness and things like that needed to be changed.
Yeah. So every single one of those buttons that we're seeing here on the you should be able to see it on the stream now. Every single one of those buttons did a thing, right?
Yeah, so I think in BattleTech System 5, BattleTech Firestorm that we had when I opened, I think there was maybe 2 buttons that were not functional in the game.
Mm-hmm.
In System 4 BattleTech that was made for Tesla, which the pods were kind of designed in conjunction with that game engine, every button did something.
Wow.
There might have been one that was not used. I can't remember. I think they were all used. And Red Planet used almost all the buttons.
Wow, that's crazy. That's amazing.
Right, we would teach a boot camp for people that wanted to really learn how to play.
Yeah.
They would come in and it would be like 4 hours of lessons. We'll show you what every single button does. We'll bring you up to sort of an intermediate level of play in one day.
Mm-hmm.
And we would, charge them $10. You get to play all night, or $20 or whatever it was. And it was amazing to watch these like rotations of people get in the pods for the first time and start playing, not be able to walk around. And by the end of the night, they were using all of those buttons.
Wow. So
that was fun to watch.
Yeah. It's absolutely it's just crazy to think that you were able, well, also that, so okay, you're running this in 2010 on hardware that was made in what, 2001-ish, 2-ish?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So what was people's reaction to that? I mean, yeah, you've got the view thing that you were talking about. I don't remember what the proper name is. Is it parallax or, but anyway, you got the faraway view.
People's reaction is the same. Anytime you do something that you're really excited about, their reaction is that you shouldn't do that. It's stupid. Like, it's not going to work. Like, everybody just comes in and goes, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
They just look at you, they go, you're doing it wrong. They just, it's just, I don't know why people are that way, but they are.
No, they are though. They are though. Like,
we had a wave of people that was the BattleTech 4.0 players that had played at the Wizards of the Coast Game Center.
Mm-hmm.
Those people, we were still in touch with those people all those years later, because I used to play there. I had reached out. I got in touch with Steve Kitchpanich. His call sign was Kitch.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the kind of ringleaders. They had managed to borrow a couple of pods from Lauren Coleman, the BattleTech author, had a few pods in his garage or something. Wow. They borrowed some pods from him and had them set up in a garage in Kirkland. And those pods moved to Seattle. After I got back from Denver, when I met Craig, before I opened my business, I actually got to sit in those pods and play some BattleTech 4.0 at a local game store owner's house. That group was still active that whole time, that whole decade when the pods had been gone from Seattle. Those players had traveled together to world tournaments. They had this huge portion of their life that they sort of lived together as, close friends and family kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like a couple of phone calls, and I did a soft opening, and like 45 people showed up. So there was some credibility to what I was doing at that point, but the real problem comes then when those people realize, wait, what do you mean you upgraded to a different game? I like the old game. Why is this game different than the old game? It's like, because the old game, we can't get circuit boards for it anymore.
Yeah.
We can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
But, well, you're doing it wrong, Why didn't you think about this, So some of those people became fixtures for the next 5.5 years. They kept being customers. They became, my closest friends. They played in my tournaments. They hung out. They brought business, whatever.
Yeah.
Some of them we never saw again after that initial thing. They walked in excited and left disappointed because they didn't like the new version. So you can't make everybody happy.
Yeah, this is different than how it was. I don't like it.
Yes. Things change in 15 years or whatever. It's technology, like even this same old particle board, it plays different now.
Yeah. No, I have definitely found people sometimes who they get on you for not making the thing that they want, but they're not going to make that thing on their own. You know what I mean? Like I was told over and over again, people walked in and said, I was thinking about doing this. I was totally thinking about writing a business plan and trying to raise some money to do something like what you're doing. Yeah.
And my message to anybody listening to this is just go do it. You'll have fun. It's worth it. Go do it.
I do have a bit different of a take on that, but we'll get into that in the post game. But
sure.
Okay, cool. Well, I guess this is as good a place as any to cut off the main show here. So if you're watching on YouTube, then welcome to Saturday, number one. But number two, this is going to be kind of the end of the road for the YouTube stream. So I hope you enjoyed. Check us out, synshop.org, if you want more information on the shop. And if you want more information on upcoming events, especially online ones just like this, meetup.com/Synshop is the place to go. Hi, I'm the Mighty Pong, host of the show that you just got done watching. Hey, if you'd like to see the entire show and not just the first hour, make sure that you watch on twitch.tv/Synshop every Friday night for the main show. And on Monday nights, we have our special project night. So you can join us, build something, and basically throw stuff at us while we try to concentrate on things. It's a lot of fun. Kind of. But hey, anyway, we hope to see you there. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, so join us over there, twitch.tv/Synshop. I am, of course, the Mighty Pong, and we will see you there. One take.